leave you the floor. Dear Finn, Halligan, you're in very good hands, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this 53rd edition of VdR2022. We are having one more online talk because we love online so much. I'm just kidding. I hope that it's our last online talk ever, or maybe it's not, because actually it's nice to be connecting with people that are remote from each other and to be sharing a bit of time, you know, during the festival in parallel. This talk is almost a girl-only talk. It was really important to have a large female representation, since we're talking about, you know, A-list, class A, big festival, prestigious festival. The future is going to be female, we know that. So we are just like preparing the future. Frédéric, we are making an exception for you because we love you very much. But, you know, it was important to have ladies first and ladies mainly. The idea today, as you well know, is to discuss the importance, the role, how documentaries are represented, taking part, taking advantage, or maybe sometimes suffering from, you know, larger festival, how you guys in your respective festival deal with docs, you know, feel like they maybe took more importance in the last years. So we are going to discuss all that. I'm sure that Finn is going to introduce each one of you. So I will let her do that job. I'm very happy though to welcome all of you and to welcome, of course, the festival you're representing. Of course, for us, it's very meaningful that those festivals are represented here. So Venice, Berlinale Forum, Viennale, and Tribeca. Many thanks for taking part in this. Many thanks, dear Finn. And without further ado, I'm leaving you the floor, and I hope you will have a lovely talk.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And as you say, it's been an interesting time. It's been a time of great change for everyone in every festival, and for documentaries, certainly in terms of gaining more prominence. I feel, but I'll let everyone speak. On our panel today, we're lucky to have Frédéric Boyer, the artistic director of the Tribeca Film Festival, Eva Sangiorgi, the artistic director of the Viennale, Giulia D'Agnolo Vallan from the Venice Film Festival Selection Committee, and she's also an American programmer, and Cristina, the Berlinale Forum director. So everybody involved in programming documentaries and on the ground, really, in terms of wider festivals programming documentaries. So if I could, I would like to ask you all to introduce yourself and the festival that you're working for. We'll just start with that. So Frédéric, could you start? Because I started with you. Could you start, please?
Yes, I'm the artistic director of the Tribeca Film Festival since 10 years. I'm the artistic director of Les Arcs Film Festival. We are not doing a lot of docs since 13 years, and also Reykjavik Film Festival since 3 years.
Thank you. Eva, can I move on to you?
Yes, I'm the director of the Viennale, the Vienna International Film Festival, as you correctly introduced me, since 4 years. I used to live and work in Mexico City before in a festival called Ficunam.
Cristina, can I move on to you?
Sure. So I'm the head of the Berlinale Forum, which is a section of the Berlinale. It's a special section of the Berlinale because it's an independent section. So it's not run by the Berlinale, even though we share a lot of things when it comes to organization. But when it comes to artistic choices, we are independent, and the organization, the institution which is running the Berlinale is the Berlinale Forum is the Arsenal Institute for Film and Video Art. I started in 2019. Yeah, that's it for the moment.
Thank you, Cristina. And finally, Giulia. Oh, you're on mute there.
As you mentioned, I'm a member of the selection committee of the Venice Film Festival, and I've been a member for 10 years, similar to that, and I'm also the American programmer. I have a long history with with American cinema, but I'm responsible for most relationship with the American film industry, but also participate to all the decisions made on the selection.
Well, thank you all. I mean, now, obviously, everyone's going to have to kind of go through. You all have different attitudes. You all have different sections. And I'll go back again to Frédéric, because I know that, you have separate sections for documentaries. So can you explain how your festival approaches documentaries, Frédéric?
Yes, we are programming 105 films, probably this year 110 films. 50% of the program are documentaries. We have a competitive section, which is a documentary, but we have also a spotlight. We call it spotlight documentary section. It's like a film about a very famous actor or something, a little bit more red carpety. And we have also a section called Viewpoint, which is a little bit our sidebar. We can have also everywhere international premiere, but mostly in Viewpoint it's world premiere and some international premiere. And we have since 3 years a new section, which are mostly docs. It's called Movie Plus. It's a film. It's a film and an event. It can be a conversation. It can be a film about a musician and a concert. It can be a film about a cook and a conversation about a cuisine. So it's like a whole night, a whole evening. So the tickets, it's a little bit more pricey. The venue, it's bigger, and it's that's it. So at the end, it's more or less 50-55 docs every year.
Well, Cristina, if I could move on to you, because you're the smaller section, very small, intimate, and as we know, all docs are not equal. There's hybrid docs, artistic docs, and probably the forum would be the point where we're looking at that. So can you describe your approach to documentaries?
Yeah, you're certainly right. I think the forum shows a whole array of what is possible in documentary filmmaking, be it leaning towards hybrid filmmaking, be it leaning towards essayistic filmmaking. So documentary filmmaking is really important for our section. In total, we show roughly 45 films each year, and I'd say that half of them or even more tend to be documentaries. However, documentaries crossing over to fictional films, essayistic films, political essays, etc. So it's really, I think, one of the aims of the forum, one of the objectives of the forum is to give an impression of what's going on in documentary filmmaking in its broadest sense. We are definitely exploring all the different types of documentary filmmaking, from a very classical approach, observational approach, like in Konstantin Wolf's beautiful For the Many, the Viennese Chamber of Labor, which premiered this year, which would really be a classical observational documentary, highly insightful, very well done. Two more experimental forms, like, for instance, a Canadian documentary, a debut by Myriam Charles, Cette Maison, This House, which is based on her own family history, but evolves into something completely different and far broader. So that would be the range, and we cover everything in between.
Do you have a goal, for example? Do you have not slots, but do you have an objective in mind when a charter where we want to have this, that, and the other, or see how it falls down? I mean,
first and foremost, it's about inviting films that are truly interesting, groundbreaking, inspiring, that are trying new things. Maybe it does not always have to be innovative, but still, it's always interesting when you see something you have not seen before. That is something which is definitely intriguing. So, for instance, thinking about a film from this year's program from Portugal, Terra que Marca by Raul Domingues. a film which has a very particular relationship to the ground and to the soil and to plants and to animals and to tools in an agricultural context. So it was really something I had not seen before, and I found it highly interesting. So of course we're aiming for something like that. On the other hand, for instance, when we are faced with a film like the one I mentioned by Konstantin Wolf, we are delighted and we want to show it. And I could also say that, for instance, James Benning is a filmmaker which is a regular guest in the Berlinale Forum, and his most recent film, United States of America, is for me the incarnation of a forum film, because it seems to document something, but then you realize at the end that maybe what you thought of as a document is something completely different. So it's also a film that questions the mechanisms of documentation and representation.
Thank you. Giulia, moving on to you. I mean, one of the biggest festivals, if not the biggest film festival in the world. Obviously, lots of pressure on your slots there in competition. I mean, you know, I think maybe you would average like one, maybe, I'm not sure, but you also have different other sections to play with, and there's been quite a strong presence for documentaries in Orizzonti and the various other sidebars. Could you explain a little bit about your approach to it?
Yes, I mean, it's interesting. As I was gathering my ideas yesterday, I discovered, and I didn't know, that the relationship between the Venice Film Festival and documentary, it dates from the origins. I mean, the second edition of the festival in 1932 was won by Men from Aran, the Robert Flaherty documentary. You know, Olympia won a couple of days later. Then there was a long time where not many were shown. I think we don't have a specific section of the documentaries, but its presence has been increasing, you know, and it has been. And it's peppered a little bit all over the place. It's out of competition, is in the Orizzonti competition, and is in the main competition. And then we also have a special section of documentary about cinema attached to the to the classic section. So considering that, and I like to think that part of this relationship that Venice has with documentary, which I think is a strong relationship, is also due to the fact of our association with the Arts Biennial, and you know, it's a very lively relationship that we have. I think one of the defining moments was 2013. I believe it's the year when Gianfranco Rosi's Sacro Gra won the main competition, you know, and that was a real, because it was not easy to agree, that for all of us to agree that the film had to go in competition. You know, there were resistances because it felt like we're not protecting enough, the audience is not used to it. But so that was really a big step, I think, for us in terms of the way we perceive documentary, you know, and we had Notturno was in 2020. Fred Wiseman had Ex Libris, you know, and as respected as Wiseman is, not a lot of the A Festival put his films in competition, and I'm delighted to say that we had these last 6 films were all in Venice, whether they were out or in competition. You know, another big step for the Mostra was to give him, Fred, a career award. That's another big step for an A-list festival, I think, because a Golden Lion was never awarded before to a documentarian. You know, although Wiseman does not really like to be defined like that. So our lineup is not as big as some of my colleagues here's festivals. So we do have to be very, very, very selective. But I was looking at the figures, and the outer competition is where most of the documentaries go, but usually there is at least a 50-50 between the fiction and the documentary. So there are 20 is like 11 documentary and 9, you know, in the last few years, it's been increasing. And for us, I don't know if we look at the specific type of documentary. You know, I like to think that Venice is a director-driven festival, and so for us, you know, the director point of view, the formal point of view, it's very important in documentary. Is also because we have so little to space for them. But, we try to be as open as possible. I mean, in one way, we put Laurie Anderson's Year of the Dog in competition years ago, and that's an essay film, which is also a documentary. Franco Maresco works very much on the fine line, and I like that we have not created a specific session for documentary, because it encourages the idea that documentaries can participate to the same space as a traditional competition features.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Giulia. Eva, can I move over to you and your friend who's making a star cameo appearance? How does the Viennale approach documentaries? What's your modus operandi? Because you're a very selective festival, sort of, invite and highly curated. So could you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, I find myself very much representative from what Giulia just said. I mean, the Viennale is a very director-driven festival. So the selection is done after, first of all, it's important for the ones who do not know the Viennale to explain that it's a festival without competition, and is a festival happening at the end of the year in October, November, collecting what happened in festivals from the main ones to the very small and local geographies, now trying to pick up a little bit the representation of cinema in a very wide range. And since I'm there, so since 4 years, I erased the category documentary and fiction. It's a very big festival, as audience focused. We present around 300 titles, and the contemporary section is composed by more than 120, 130 titles, not feature films. And in the beginning, also in order to orient the audience, there were these two big, huge categories, more or less half and half divided, documentary and fiction. And I was not feeling comfortable. So my position was really put everything together. I mean, I don't have to explain why. Of course, the boundaries are difficult to be settled more and more. And the interest is a way to underline the interest of the festival in finding films with a very clear idea of a director behind. And now, I don't know, to make a proportion is more difficult for me because of everything is together. But I would say this probably not half and half, but the documentaries are very, very well represented. This idea of mixing did not create sympathy in the beginning, because I mean it was a change, but immediately, and now I'm sure that the audience also appreciated. Is a way of giving another position to documentary films at the same level and not putting in different position. Also, it's important to notice that before, as it happens in many festivals with categories, the documentary would come after the fiction section. I don't know for which reason, but probably because it was a little bigger and in terms of numbers. And in this way, everything is together. And the important thing is to find out information through the synopsis and the critical text we provide with.
Thank you. Thanks, Eva. I'm wondering how you've all experienced the changes over the last 2 years of the pandemic, but also to the changes brought about by streamer services and the kind of, the higher visibility of documentaries, or the more opportunities for people to see documentaries. Frédéric, can I start with you again? Because I'm interested in the US perspective, because of course you must come under quite a lot of pressure from those streamers and that side of the business. And then there's the artistic side of the business, and sometimes they meet.
Yes, there is I didn't read it again, but there is a very interesting article by Eric Cohn from IndieWire about the strange relationship between festivals, mostly American Film Festival, and streamers. Because the problem is, of course, the streamers could be Netflix, HBO, Nat Geo. Of course, they want to show their film, but we have to select films. We cannot say yes to, this is the main problem for the American films. So I think Sundance are doing really well, because even there is the streamings, the platform are important. A film like Honeyland was in Sundance, and it's a North Macedonian film. It's a wonderful film. It's a gem. It's exactly what festivals are looking for. It's a film you try to find with no connection through streaming, and you have to run the game. Otherwise, the problem is, of course, everybody wants to show the film, and then you are just here to offer a platform for their film. So we have to fight, we have to be polite, we have to be, and by the way, they have also good films. So it's like, but I think but first in the US, I mean, I would not say, but I have respect for Berlin, but the biggest film festival, not doc, but feature is Cannes. But for in the US and in the world, one of the biggest is Sundance. So all the films are in Sundance, or they are not finished, or they are rejected. And then there is another part with it. The problem for us is to get film, and to have the film. We in Tribeca, we are in June, so we are not fighting because we are not playing exactly the same film. But you have CPH docs, you have of course a Vision du Réel, and for us it's a little bit more hot docs and South by Southwest. So it's like there is a lot of joy, but there is a lot of pain to trying to have the world premiere of a film. And the most important is to have good films, and not to have a film because it's invited in another film festival, which is South by. So there is a lot of, the process is really complicated. And what we are doing, I always say, for the feature film, the film has to be good, or good for me. For the docs, I'm not sure. It can be a documentary, but it can be a document. It can be interesting. I'm not sure Sugarman, I mean, the film about Sixto Rodriguez is a good film, but it's an interesting film. So it's like all the degree, the layers of what is a good film and a good doc. I don't know. You can fill the room with 1,000 people about a film about Brian Wilson from Beach Boys. Why not? I'm not against. And I don't care if the film is not exceptional, because it's going to be another. But we are also doing observational films. We are doing a film, not really forum, but we are doing films. But most of the time, it's like, and one thing which is also very important, everybody say, okay, in the US, you are checking the box. And I say, yes, we are checking the box. We have an environmental award. So we need and we want. We need to think about the communities. We need to think about women filmmakers. Otherwise, we have 100% of male filmmakers. So we are checking the box. And the geography is very important to trying to have an Asian film. I mean, we cannot have only 10 Danish films. Danish documentaries is exceptional. Of course, we can, but it's also the balance of, but like it's for everybody, it's exactly the same. But I think it's really important to have film, and I think the audience and the critics, they are really not stupid. I'm giving another example, a wonderful film, extremely small and almost a masterpiece, the film by Alexander Nano, Collective. Okay, this film was nominated to the Oscar. It's really a simple film, but what a great film. And it was not brought by Netflix or Apple TV. It was just the new Nano film. So I think it's really important for us to try to get our autonomy and to be a little bit more detached from platforms.
What's interesting, Eva, that's really interesting. Eva, how about with you? Have you noticed changes over the last couple of years? And interestingly, what Frédéric says, that you can fill an audience with, you can fill a cinema with a film about someone that's interesting, and the difference between interesting and art, and that's very interesting. What's your take, Eva? What have you noticed recently?
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 years are very, very peculiar, no? So, but yes, having a perspective a little longer. From the position of the Viennale and the perspective of the Viennale, I have to say we are very lucky. Being a festival that is focused on audience, there is a very great interest and curiosity. So this relationship is safe and healthy, and even the pandemic did not harm at all. And actually, because we were lucky enough to have a physical event even in these days. But of course, more and more the young generations are also interested in other possibilities and entertainment. I have to say that for what concerns the Viennale, I'm kind of orthodox. So I've always been working against the collaboration with any platform, because a festival is something different, even if I use them for certain specific reason and for my own research or a pleasure. What happens in a festival is something different, and our mission is completely physical and connected to a sociality aspect. And so and it's a conflictive relationship, and I mean, lucky enough, the Biennale is not armed by the existence of this. I mean, we have been working on having a festival in theaters, and even when we were, I mean, threatening of not happening, we took this decision of not having any other alternative, exactly because our dialogue with the audience is based on the fact that we can meet in theaters. I cannot create any other kind of dialogue. So this is for what concerns the selection, and what was Frédéric saying is the same. There's a kind of great tradition and habit in the Viennese audience. Is a very lucky festival, so that we can really dare of making a selection without compromises. This is very special, and I believe that this is the reason why the festival on the other side is working so well, because there are not these kind of compromises, and they can find them in the audience. Films sometimes also, of course, of bigger production values that are available a little later on other platforms as well, but makes special the fact that they are selected. And even among the films with more bigger production values, it's clear that there's a curatorial consideration behind, and so we are able to approach the cinema in a very big sense, from big productions or including several co-productions to very independent products.
Thanks, Yvette. I mean, Cristina, I would be extremely shocked if I saw a streamer documentary in Forum, but so I'm assuming that's not been a consideration for you. But the question, I suppose, in that case is, and for all of you really, is like, how do you help the documentaries that are coming to you, possibly without sales agents, possibly, you know, a bit different, a bit, you know, how do you support these documentarians and their films at a festival that is just big and competitive and, you know, with the press, with people seeing them?
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
So you're totally right. I think the typical Netflix documentary fare is something you will not find in the Forum's lineup. And that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy watching Netflix films. However, I noticed that there are more specialized platforms, and I think they are of quite a big importance, like Movie, of course, but also in France, Tank, which is focused on documentary films. And so I wouldn't describe the relationship as antagonistic, more like I think for the films we show, it's good to know that there is this type of distribution, that there is this option, because in fact, when it comes to regular cinema releases, most of the films, especially the hybrid, more essayistic films we show, they might face certain difficulties. Not necessarily and not always, but usually they won't have like a big cinema release. And so I think that, for instance, having a live on a platform like Tank is a very good thing. Having a live on a platform like Movie is a very good thing for the films we show. That might explain a little bit the relationship we have with streaming platforms. Now, when it comes to what we are doing for these films, which in fact, not always, but oftentimes tend to be a little fragile when it comes to an economic aspect. I think what is important during the forum is that it is a section of the Berlinale which is attractive for programmers. So a lot of programmers watch films during the Berlinale forum and pick these films for their festivals. If you look at Art of the Real in New York, which finished just I think on the 7th, didn't it? They had 8 films from the forum, 7 from this year's program and 1 from last year's program. You will find forum titles everywhere. I think what we provide and what we have been able to provide is precisely this opportunity to meet or to have a film meet with people who program it in other contexts and sort of like with people who multiply the film. So that's what we can do to strengthen this type of filmmaking.
Thank you, Cristina. Yeah, and I'd like to ask you, Giulia, about that as well, because, you know, obviously Venice just so big and noisy and, you know, exciting and so many great films in everywhere. I mean, how do you keep an eye on the documentaries which might need a little bit more, you know, hand holding, or, you know, and also to, you know, people there coming with the sales agent looking for sales, which is another part of the festival marketplace that we sort of need to talk about as well, you know, how to help them that way. Oh, Giulia, you need to mic.
One of the things that Alberto Barbera did when he came on was to make the festival a little smaller number-wise. And I think that helped creating a bigger space for each movie, and whether it's a fiction film or a documentary. So I think that already laid the basis for more attention to be given, you know, to individual films rather than trying to pile them up. I mean, with the documentary, the submissions are a lot, both from, you know, as everybody knows, we don't discriminate against streamers. We take, film from the platforms. Although I was trying to think when you were talking, which films we showed, which documentary we showed for Netflix. I remember an Errol Morris series. I remember Winter of Fire was one of the early films we showed of Netflix, but also something as interesting as this Orson Welles' Dennis Hopper piece, which I learned of the existing footage and I said, I want it for, you know, and so I'm glad that someone paid for it. And, you know, we were able to show. For the biggest difficulties for us is because quantity wise, we don't have a lot of space, is to make it understand a difference between when a documentary is an informative documentary and then something that is more like a movie, and so in that sense, our selection is a little bit strict because we can't just say, oh, this is interesting, and then we're going to show it, you know. So Alexander Nanau Collective, you know, which Frédéric mentioned, it premiered in Venice. I mean, we were stunned when we saw it. So, you know, we try to be but with all movies, when the submission comes in, to be sensitive to the fact that some films they don't have big sales agents that call you 15 times or 100 times, you know, that they need more space. And in that sense, you know, we try to, it's the way you position it, you position things so that they're not dwarfed from like a major film, you know, you put them in a day that there is space for attention from the press, you know. A lot of it is also when you do the calendar, you know, is so that films cannot get too jam and then obscure by things that have a, you know, more a flashier profile.
It sort of seems to me that, you know, that sort of the hybrid with the animation documentary hybrid has managed to kind of, you know, do very well in festival programming and also too in awards and things like that. But sort of, and that's made it sort of slid in there a little bit, you know, I suppose. But I guess my question is to you, Giulia, is like, is documentary programmed in any different way? And it's to all of you as well. Do you program a different way to the rest of the program? You know, how is it treated within your festival when it comes to programming?
I think that the one difference is that there is from a calendar point of view is that in the outer competition as a daily slot that is devoted to documentaries. So as everything in festivals, you're trying to create a ritual for, you know, so people know that at 2:00, that's when we show, you know, the outer competition documentary. For the ones that are in competition, it's just a matter of when the filmmaker is available and when it doesn't clash with obviously to something else. But, you know, but I think that when you do a calendar, if you give the audience and the you know, our colleagues in the industry a clear path to how to interact with the festival, then, you know, it establishes an identity for that hour. Yeah. And you know, and then sometimes we program in the, you know, if there is a big music piece, then it can go in the evening, you know, but most of the subtleties are done within the you know, within the calendar once we lock the program.
Eva, do you approach programming the documentaries in a different way as well, or is it the same?
No, in my case, actually, I'm very much willing and looking for with a particular attention. So it's the same amount of criteria for feature fiction and documentary. Is more the intent of giving making a selection that can be representative, as I said before, for what happened in the film world, all around the world, in every categories. Also with a big attention, of course, of this so-called creative documentaries, of essays, film, and hybrids, and forms very much of research. And so there's the same attention and and a particular interest in this kind of form. And of course, we always have a number of very well-known directors. Cristina mentioned James Benning. After Berlinale, of course, we always present him also at the Viennale, and this is just one of the examples. Sergei Loznitsa has always been present with his films, and many other, but also trying to find new voices. And so in these mixtures, that is a little bit the recipe of the Viennale. And I try, as I raised the category, as I said before, is more difficult, but we have internal lists in order to try to at least monitoring a kind of balance in order to offer a very diversity of forms.
Frédéric, I called a couple of documentary makers, you know, about this panel and asked them, you know, what were their concerns, and the overriding concern is it's about selection. It's about I think they're worried that, you know, their submissions aren't seen, you know, and the second concern was that how can you break in new talents into A-list festivals when yes, exactly. How do you break new talent into A-list festivals?
It's a very good question, and in Tribeca it's extremely democratic. We have a selection committee for documentaries. There is 12 people. They are all working. Some are working in Lisboa, from everywhere in the world, not only American, also Australian, South American, and they know well. They are working for 1, 2, or 3 documentary film festivals, so they are watching everything. So we are trying to, when we are receiving, in Tribeca, we are receiving 13,000 films. So in terms of docs, it's probably 3,000 docs are sent to Tribeca. And of course, we have a senior programmer team. So it's really well organized. But I think there is something which changed. I don't want to. I think the question was good. And what is important for us is to discover a good filmmaker or new filmmaker want to premiere in Tribeca, of course, it's what I really want to. I mean, I'm responsible about this, but I think the production of the documentaries are changing, and I think it started with Man on a Wire by James March. It's not a bad film, but it's one of the first. It was 1998. It was in Sundance. I'm not against, but we have to be used. There is a lot of production. There is a lot of reenactment. It's now you have the Tinder Swindler. It's typically the film which everything, the production people, I mean, the Americans, only the Americans, they are sending film which it's not about filmmaking. The production with voiceover, animation, and this, and overproduce, and music. And at the end, there is nothing. If you take off all the artifact, I think if there is nothing, it's maybe a good product, and probably it's something going to be good for the platform. But I'm really I'm trying to stay aware about this kind of new production of documentaries, which is not exactly what it should be. Even if Tribeca were a little bit more accessible and things, but I think it's quite important to have the minimum for me of filmmaking. And I'm coming back to what I'm saying about interesting. We play a film which was a really fantastic success because the guy is a composer. So it was the first doc about Ruchi Sakamoto. And I think it was fascinating because I love Sakamoto. And then we can have so many people who are fans of Sakamoto as a composer, but also we can talk about Furio and what he did. And the film was good. So you have a good enough film and pretty good film, a very interesting topic, and the first film about Sakamoto. And he was there, and the talk with Sakamoto was extraordinary. So we are not playing Wang Bing, even if I love Wang Bing in Tribeca. But we are trying to do our best. And for coming back to your question, of course, we are trying to see any film from Peru, Chile, Japan, anything which can be interesting. It is discussed, very well discussed.
How does it work for you, Giulia? Is there a separate documentary selection committee as well? Oh, Mike.
We all watch everything. So no, there is no specialized selection committee for the documentary. And I'm happy to say that we show Wen Bing and we also show the Sakamoto film because we really liked it. And and it's a really, it's a good insider view of an artist's mind. So and great work. No, we don't. We kind of shift between the two forms, and it is, as Frédéric says, it's always really exciting when you find a new voice, and so it's important for us to keep alert in the general noise of all the big submissions to just be open to that. That's why, for example, for lesser known filmmakers, when they ask me how to submit, when to submit, and I always say, don't come in at the last minute if you can, because everybody's is the festival is the program is already full and everybody's tired. Just try to send stuff early so that we have a little bit more time. You try to make filmmakers sensitive to the process in a way that they don't get chewed into the rush, the final rush, and so those are just small techniques to keep us vigilant towards the new work, and also explain to the filmmakers how to maximize when they submit like ours.
Oh, that's really useful. That's really useful. Eva, do you have any sort of tips like that about your submission process?
In the case of Viennale, I mean, there's a submission system that is for free and open to everybody, and is a very important tool to get more films and information, but it's also curated festival. So again, it's a little bit spatial, the process. So we inform clearly also in the call for entry that it's not necessarily we will then get back to everybody who applied, and I don't have, as also for free, a committee who who systematically pass through the call for entry. So it's important to understand that, because how it works is that the films are selected by me directly, and I have consultants helping me. But it's a festival that works in a very special way, again, being a selection of what happened already in other festivals. So gives you a much more room to select with calm during the year, and without all the pressure of having a premiere and world premiere or international premieres. And so on. Anyhow, I pass through the entire call for entry. On the side, of course, I make my selection in an independent way. For the Austrian submission, but this interests only the Austrian, I have two people. They watch everything together with me, but the rest is a little bit divided between me and the consultant. So the particular system.
So I suppose it's the same kind of advice that, you know, don't wait till the last minute to do it. Try to.
Yes, that's of course, because that's getting very, very impressed. There's a lot of pressure, and the work cannot be accurate exactly for the reason I explained, for the process itself. So it's important. It's also a human limit. It's important to if somebody is interested, to send the film as soon as possible. Mm-hmm.
Also, too, I mean, you're all invested in world premieres, everybody here on this, you know, and that's a difficult thing for, you know, filmmakers, you know, to sort of worry about where it all goes. Cristina, how is your submission? I mean, how is your submission process?
So, of course, we scout. Once the festival is over, we start scouting again. And in fact, there are a lot of labs specialized in creative documentary or in hybrid films. So that is something we take into account, definitely. And then we have a very structured process. We have pre-selection, we have consultants, and we have the committee. The people involved in pre-selection mostly watch the films submitted to the Berlinale, and then they check if it's something they could picture in the film context or they could not picture in the film context. Once they recommend a film, the committee is going to watch it. Then we have consultants all over the world, not only with regional expertise, also with, for instance, specific expertise in queer filmmaking. So the expertise is not like only Latin America or only the MENA region. It's also more aesthetically, artistically coined. And these people watch films and comment on these films, but they also scout and provide us with their recommendations. And that is something very, very helpful and necessary. And then there's the committee, and we watch everything which has been recommended, and we watch everything. For instance, if I see something in the work in progress presentation, which is going to happen in Nyon, and I see something, and then I find it interesting, and then we're going to watch it together. And we spend quite a lot of time in the cinema together in October, November, and December, and it's great. I like that very much. And slowly the program evolves out of these ingredients, out of these different layers of selection and pre-selection.
Well, I mean, Frédéric, I'll ask you first again. You know, documentary cinema obviously can be very, very immediate and reflect to us questions about what's going on in our world right now. So, you know, for example, and I think Cristina wanted to talk about this too, is, you know, given the war in Ukraine, you know, about the urgency and of turning around these films quite quickly and bringing up questions about trust and context. It's very interesting you said that. I mean, how are you feeling now that you're programming Ukraine just being one thing, but you know, these things can be so fast?
Yeah, Finn,
Oh, sorry. I mean, when you're programming documentaries, and the involving current affairs.
Yes, it's so of course we are looking any film related to Ukraine and from Ukrainian filmmakers. But personally, I don't think it's a good idea to show a film about the Donbass war in 2014 or Maidan. It's and film about Ukraine are not done yet. So of course we are supporting, but I'm not sure we have to take an Ukrainian film because it's Ukrainian. I think it's just, but of course it's like the first film about Syrian refugee, of course we were extremely interested. But when we saw 40 films about Syrian family thing, there is something which is impossible for me to absorb. Also because of the filmmaking. I think the topics has to be relevant and new and again interesting, even in a journalistic way, not about filmmaking way, but there is something we can get not only review from film critics, but also from in New York, from the New York Times. So when we are in New York, our audience is really New York. So of course, if we have a film about Chelsea Hotel, is going to be interesting for our audience if we have a film. So it's like, of course, and everybody thinks a film going to fit with Tribeca because of this or that. But of course, we have to think about our audience and repeating political things, because the most important is the quality of the film. It's not because it's a film from Ukraine. It's just a question of a new voice, a vision, a fantastic editing, and try to be a little bit more subtle, because not all the docs are good, and sometimes they are very painful to watch. It's not always sometimes it's good, but it's and also with hybrid film. So I love hybrid film, but sometimes personally I think it's too much. People are saying it's hybrid. It's not. Don't tell us it's hybrid. We can see it's an hybrid film, but I'm not sure it's a quality to be hybrid. It's just a style which I like, but it's yeah. I don't know if I responded to your question.
No, thank you. Cristina, can I come to you? Because I know that, yes, it was something that was concerning you too, about the trust in the imagery and the kind of the rapidness of what might be coming through. One assumes there's a lot being shot at the moment, not least by Sean Penn, but
yeah, I think it's a very broad and complex question, in fact, and there are many layers to it. And as Frédéric pointed out, I think that films that are taking shape in a very urgent manner, or which express their urgency, they're usually artistically, aesthetically, are not very, how shall I put it, satisfactory. I think I wouldn't really see them in a festival program. However, and it's not only the war in Ukraine, I have the feeling that maybe the relationship film festivals tend to have with the outside world has to be rethought and revisioned. Because with the debate about what films to show, should we show Russian films, should we not show Russian films, these debates are very persistent at the moment, and logically so, and there are different answers, and everybody has good reasons for their answers. My feeling is that until very recently, we had we were more or less imposing our Western liberal point of view, and we were assuming that films that responded to that point of view were interesting and should be distributed and should be selected, etc. But that the entire question of who are we to decide which films are meaningful in a political way, what do we expect, what do we want to see in this type of films? So I don't have a clear-cut answer for this question, of course not, because it's too broad and too multi-layered, but I think it is a question we should definitely ask ourselves. And I think also, like for instance, the very heated debate Sergei Loznitsa's films are creating right now. And I don't want to take side at this moment in this type of debate, but I realize that there is a very, very heated debate around a filmmaker, which is very dear to a lot of film festivals. So what's going on there? Why is this debate happening? And I find this very interesting, but also in a sense that I think from time to time we should question our own position and our own processes of decision making. I hope I could make a clear point in this messy situation.
Yeah, it is a big question. I mean, Giulia, not to sort of completely bat it over to you, but like, how can festivals help filmmakers, you know, documentary filmmakers? How can they support them? Festivals like you guys, you know, I mean, how can you?
We're not talking about the reality anymore. We're talking about supporting the supporting the films. Well, you know, by showing them and giving them our big, you know, shout out. Venice being a world premiere only festival, it's the first step for a lot of these films, you know, and it's an important thing for responsibility for us, I believe, and so we take it seriously, and I think, you know, what Cristina was saying is a very profound question in many aspects. I don't think Venice is a festival that lends itself to the immediacy of like the newsworthy kind of thing. So we need to see there, we lunch there. It's just not our process. But then you think of films you've shown several years ago, and then they illuminate the some of the present. And I'm not only talking about documentary. Film as a way to speak about what happens, even when it's not directly addressed or is not constructed in just pure information, way. And I think that, I don't know how more we can help. I think that what I personally would like is us to include more in competition, because the competition has a higher visibility than the other competition. So to work to, especially in Orizzonti, I would like to see more, but that's about our internal process and how we work. I would like to increase the number of documentaries in competition if possible, to work towards that, because that would make them even more. Venice has a contagious effect, like some of the other festival, of course, as the Forum and all of them have an important platform. And so just to help a film get credibility that then gets transferred to a different and it moves on. And it's really important for filmmakers, especially because documentaries are, historically, there is less financing behind them, and therefore less money to buy, to hire a publicist and to do so. So the festival have a really important function in making them visible.
Yes, and sort of leading the way, as you say, for other festivals. I mean, Cannes, for example, like rarely has a documentary film in competition, and some in certain regard, but there was a lot last year. I think there was about 29. So that sort of points a way forward. Eva, I'm responding here to a question from one of the audience, and just wondering about your take on, do you have a position on Russian films with state funding? This has come through from a member of the audience, and actually, if anybody in the audience wants to ask any questions, please fire ahead. But it's quite a difficult one. It's, do you have a position about Russian films with state funding? Where are you with that? Are you considering them or not?
It's a very complex topic, and it's a little bit connected to what has been said before. It's what I'm reflecting in this moment. But as you know, I mean, most of the films coming from Russia have a kind of national financing, but this does not mean that they are affiliated to the regime. So I think that we should be very much more critical than understanding in black and white the situation. And I'm personally not in favor of banning Russian Russian films, but of course I have an ethical position towards every kind of film and productions, not only concerning the actual happening in Ukraine. That's a little bit is a guide for my selection and criteria that are also connected to an ethical point, in the sense that it's not so easy just to define the good and the bad if they are received financial aid from the government, and I will be open to have Russian films to be very specific in my selection. Otherwise, the same criteria should be applied to many other kind of governments, not only for the urgency of the agenda to the specific situation, but also we receive films from the Philippines or from Brazil, in a way that is also a government that can be discussed very openly, and that does not mean that the people are affiliated and representing that politics. So I think that the state of art in this sense should be separated.
Frédéric, I mean, with you coming up very shortly, do you have a position on it? Are you?
Yes, I have a position, and it's a very complex question and very interesting question. And the thing is, if we, the festival, are supporting a film without any national grants from Russia, the problem, the filmmakers can be banned from their own country when they come back, and anything they can say if they are coming through Finland, through I don't know where, if they're coming to a festival, or any word's going to be recorded and observed by the Russian government. So I think it's also problematic to for them to take risk to do anything, because when they come back, they're going to be against. It's not because you accept an invitation in one of our festivals, you have to be banned for your own country. So it's a very complex question. Let's see what's happening in Cannes. I heard that there is a few films from Russia, but they have to come back to Moscow or St. Petersburg and still working in. So it's really, really complex. I don't have any solution in a way. I just think Russian cinema is extraordinary since the beginning until now, and there's also a lot of documentaries, and it's super creative, and people are really fantastic. So I don't want to stop watching, trying to see things from. I'm still working on Russian cinemas and to be in touch with filmmakers.
Yes, I mean, documentary is a place where the filmmaker really can't
Yeah, exactly.
hide. It can't be disguised. It's very, very open.
Yeah.
You know, Giulia, just asking you the same question, really. I mean, I'm assuming, Cristina, it's a bit early for the Berlinale to have, you know, to be talking about that. But Giulia, how are you all thinking about it?
I think that the Biennale took a position which is not only for the film festival, but it's also for the visual arts, and is that we will invite Russian films not affiliated, obviously affiliated with the regime, and I think that goes not just for the films again, but for the Arts Biennial, which opens in few weeks. So.
Another question, which is a lot sort of easier, really, is to all of you. It's how do you watch the films for selection? Do you watch them at home? Do you watch them in a cinema, or do you watch them together? This is from a film student. If anyone would like to take that one on.
Okay, I'll start. It varies. I mean, clearly for the pandemic, it was like at home and alone. But you know, at the beginning, when film used to come all right before, you know, just after Cannes. Originally, the Venice selection was happening after Cannes. I think I like to believe that we have become a little bit more competitive, and so we start getting films in November. And so at that point, we kind of mostly watch at home unless screenings are organized. I'm in New York for a big part of the year, so right now the screenings room are open again. They're setting screens out for me in New York. Traditionally, Alberto, the director, and most of my colleagues moved to Venice at the very beginning of June, and right after Cannes, and then they stay and then they screen in theater every day until mid-July. and those films are all seen in theater. You know, they divide sometimes themselves in groups and you know, in different theater, but those films are all seen on the big, you know, on the big screen. So
Wow,
that's
it's quite something, really, isn't it? All of you in Venice. But Frédéric, how about you?
I think the best is to watch a film with your colleagues in the film theater. But I'm in Paris. Another one is in the Uptons. I mean, we are so we are receiving links and we are connected every 2 days, every 3. It depends. So we are always, and I think Zoom is much better working on Zoom than working in a sometime empty conversation, empty meetings where there is only one person talking. I think in Zoom, if someone wants to talk about the film, they have 1 minute, 2 minutes, but we are listening. It's much more democratic. So for me, it's fine. And then we are, of course, hoping to show the film on the big screen. This is the idea of festivals, is to have a large screen and a presentation. But we are used to watch film at home, so we can. For me, it's fine. We can, if the film is good, we can see it. I don't watch it on a cell phone, on my computer or TV.
Eva, how about you and your team?
Me, I'm the luckiest one because I travel a lot from festival to festival as I select films mostly from festivals. Then, of course, out of the Austrian, I watch directly in cinemas. We have cinemas, I mean, connected to the Viennale, so I can have that as a screening room. My process is mostly solitary, unfortunately. I'm very much willing to be part of a larger committee, so I watch also films alone in a cinema when is proposed by a distributor or a representative, a sales agent, a lot in Vienna. So I have my screenings in the morning, and then the rest, as you can imagine, as also Frédéric mentioned, alone in a solitary, especially for a first evaluation, and mostly then I also try to have it in special condition. Actually, this is my screening room, and then I mean the other side it turns into a very dark room with a fantastic sound system, but it's my home office.
How about you, Cristina? How about the forum team? Because I understand that you're quite far flung, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, in pre-selection, I think most of the people, all of them watch the films at home and alone. The committee watches films as a group, so it's both. I watch films at home, but there's also this moment starting at the end of September, usually, when we start to watch films together, the 5 of us. And that is a very beautiful experience, and especially during the time when cinemas were closed in Germany, it felt so privileged to be able to spend an entire day in a cinema together with 4 beloved friends and colleagues, and watch films together and discuss these films together. And for me, the group experience, in fact, is very important. We discuss films a lot, and we also have sort of like a safety net. So when it's 6 in the evening and we're all a bit tired and we start a new film and we are like, we like it, but then we don't know exactly and we're tired, and then we decide not to watch it longer than 30 minutes, let's say. But then one of us says, I'm going to finish watching it at home. And when he or she finds it interesting, we re-watch it the next day. So we have this sort of like decision-making safety net, which prevents us from taking the wrong decisions just out of being tired. As I said, it's a very enjoyable experience, not only when cinemas are closed, but especially then. And I wanted to add one thing, which is a little bit off topic. It relates to the topic we were talking about before, because it's really something which is a very important subject matter when it comes to helping filmmakers who are living in places which are in crisis, in conflict, or even in war. I think there are organizations like Artists at Risk, or in Germany there is an initiative called Martin Roth Initiative, which helps people by helping them to leave their country, and by giving residencies. The Martin Roth initiative, for instance, gives residencies in Germany. And I think we are in a position in which we should feel the responsibility of helping these artists and providing connections to the initiatives, or also maybe that's something which is happening behind the scenes, talking to politicians, which might be able to do something in favor of filmmakers who are trapped in their country. And I think, of course, you can't help each and everybody, but you can move like tiny little things. And I think one is sort of like obliged to assume this type of responsibility.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, there's a question here about any thoughts in the present and future of exhibiting immersive non-fiction at your festivals, such as VR and 360-degree video projects. But I think Venice has been a bit of a forerunner on this, haven't you, Giulia? So
Yes, and I confess I'm not involved in that selection process, but yes, I'm happy to say that Venice has been in the forerunner of showing VR, and also I think the first big festival to do a national competition, if not the first festival at all to do a VR competition. So yeah, and it's been very successful, and for the past 2 years, we even if the festival was happening in person during the pandemic, the VR was transferred as a virtual, it was an online experience, but we're bringing it back to in person this year.
And what would you say have been sort of the benefits or the pros and the cons of doing it? Though I know you just said that you weren't personally involved in it, but
I'm not. It's a separate group, and but I think it's good that the festival react to what's happening in the world of film, whether is VR or something else. I think that we have to be responsive to technology. I am not particularly driven to VR, but I don't respond enormously to VR. But it's a very personal call, and I think it's important to give a signal that there is a technology that has a huge creative room for creativity. For artistic creativity, and therefore giving it a space for a festival like Venice, it's important. Whether I like it or not, I think it's you have to keep current,
I'm well, thank you all, but I will thank you in a minute, but I'm just going to ask you all a kind of a final question. You've been brilliant, and thank you, which is, and this is to each of you, and I guess Eva, maybe I'll start with you. I mean, what would be on your personal wish list to do? What would you want to do in your festival regarding documentaries? Is there anything that you feel that it is in your immediate targets?
I don't have a very specific plan to change anything. As I explained, my first big change was to put everything together in order also to give another understanding of the documentaries themselves and of the program in a whole. And so this is exactly the intention, and this is a project I will keep on doing for the years I still have to. I can sure to be in Vienna, and on the other side, I can just insist on the same idea I explained in the beginning. It's when I do the program, I'm looking for a directorial perspective and a position, and this works for any kind of a film, short, feature, length, documentary, and everything. And so it's be faithful to this idea, I think. And then, of course, there is also a part dedicated to monographies and focuses on filmmakers. And in that part also tried to represent a diversity of film directors and so on of films, including also documentary forms. And we have been dedicating also to the documentaries some special attention among the rest of contemporary program.
Thank you. Frédéric, how about you? I mean, you know.
I don't know. I'm not the only person to decide, and especially the documentary. But for me, I would not say my dream, but I like the idea of carte blanche and celebrating filmmaker. I'm not sure, Tribeca, this is the place to celebrate even masters like Wiseman or Herzog, even they came. But I really like the idea of celebrating a filmmaker who did only 3 or 4 films. And it's like a kind of less than 50 years old, a first celebration of a quite unknown filmmaker, and to ask him to program his favorite film. And by the way, documentary filmmakers can program feature films. It's not separate for me. For me, it's a film. It's not, I don't know, we said documentary, but it's a film. Yes, I would like that. I would like to celebrate, and I know some, I don't want to say, but I know some filmmakers where they are doing a fantastic job since 10 years, 15 years. They did 3 films. And then, okay, why not celebrating, but it can be Alexander Nano, it can be Alexander O'Philippe, the Swiss filmmaker who is making film about filmmaking. He made a film about Psycho and Alien. I think he's great. He's 45 years old. I'm just thinking about celebrating a filmmaker, male and female, just to bring them to the light, and before they are 70 years old, and we are doing the so it's just, I'm not sure we will do it, but I like the idea.
It's a great idea. How about you, Giulia? I know you said that you'd like to program more documentaries in competition.
I think we like, that's kind of my, an ambition to have more, especially in the Orizzonti competition. To me, it's always a little bit of pushing the envelope, because Venice is the oldest festival. So, we are automatically being thought of as a very, as traditionalist, but we always try to just go a little further. It was important to me when Caniba won Orizzonti, that was like there was no documentarist in that jury, and they just went for that movie, and there was no other, there wasn't even a discussion, so I was like, okay, so we did something. And so I like, and from filmmakers, for young filmmakers, that to think of Venice as a place in the documentary form, and not that where they can experiment. It's a big festival, and there is an admission fee to the selection process, which is something that from the artistic point of view we can't control. But I like them to think that I can trust us with with their film to be taken care of, even if they are documentary and it's not our main. It doesn't appear to be our main voice.
Thank you. And Cristina, finally with you.
Yeah, I think I have 2 answers to the question. One is that the Forum always has been a place for documentary filmmaking, and a lot of very important and groundbreaking documentaries have been shown in the Forum framework, and I hope that we will continue doing so. So sometimes you don't know the very moment you program a film for the first time that it's going to be a very important film. The importance comes like afterwards. So I hope that we are sort of like working on that. That would be one thing. And the other thing is, to my perception, a lot of people who are not cinephiles and who are not regular festival goers have a perception that documentary is something which represents reality, and that's basically it. So they have an idea of more or less what they are seeing in a TV reportage or something like that. And my understanding, our understanding of documentary is something completely different. And sometimes I have a feeling that there's like a clear-cut line between our understanding of documentary and the general understanding of documentary. And I think it would be great to expand the notion of documentary and to make clear that it is something which has a lot to do with artistic choices, which has a lot to do with the medium itself and the way the medium works, and changes in technology, changes in the medium, which in turn affect the way you can shoot a film. so that to a broader audience, it becomes clear that documentary is an art form and is sort of like indebted to artistic choices. That would be lovely.
Well, thank you all. I mean, your festivals are bringing documentaries to wider audiences, and it's just been so interesting to hear how you approach that and get the nitty-gritty for any documentarians watching exactly how you do it. So I'd like to thank you for your time, and yes, well, goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Finn. Bye.
Thank you, Finn, for this beautiful moderation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Thank you, Finn. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.